Hi, everybody. Welcome to our editors panel. Today we've got an amazing lineup. My name is Jody DiPerna. I am a senior contributing writer to the Pittsburgh Current Alt Weekly magazine, and mostly my bailiwick is handling literature reviews and book reviews and author interviews and that sort of thing. So, what we're hoping to do here today is to sort of give you a look, give you a format in which you can ask questions of um, the folks who make decisions at literary journals, at publishing houses. When we're writers, we sort of write something and we send it off, and then we don't know what happens. We just pray that it will be okay. So. What we're going to do here is bring in Haley Mitchell-Hagen, Martha Bain, Jess Weibel, and Sheila Squilante, and I hope they're all here. I don't see them showing up, but there's Sheila. Hi, Sheila. Hi, Martha. Jess. Okay, we have everybody. We have a full house. So I'm really excited. I'm really happy to be moderating this panel, and I'm happy to see all of your faces this morning. So I'm just going to introduce each of you, and then we're going to let everybody talk a little bit, and then we're going to field some questions. I hope I have some questions. If not, but Haley Mitchell-Hagen holds a PhD in English from Ohio University and an MFA in poetry from the University of Washington. She's a professor of English at Ohio University Southern in southeastern Ohio. She edits Shellia-Na-Gig online and the Shellia-Na-Gig editions. Her first full-length poetry collection was published in 2018 called Light and Shadow, Shadow and Light. And her chapbook, What the Grim Girl Looks Forward to, which is a great title, was published in 2016. So, Haley, can you just say hi and tell us a little bit about Shellia-Na-Gig, just for anybody who doesn't know?
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Jody, for this opportunity. It's really exciting to be here. Just a little bit background on Shellia-Na-Gig. I ran the journal as a print journal throughout the entire 1990s, and then took a pretty big break as I went back to school and started a family. For about 15 years, I walked away from poetry. And then in 2016, I decided, I really miss having that foot in editing, and I brought Shellia-Na-Gig online. And since then, we've published 19 volumes, nearly 500 people so far. I do have a quarterly prize and a manuscript contest prize. We've awarded over $5,000 in prizes since then. And I also started Shellia-Na-Gig Editions. We've created 7 poetry collections so far and have printed 1 novel. So we're just an online thing now, okay, except for Shellia-Na-Gig Editions, which is our print size. I just really love having a foot in editing. I've always been part of it, and excited to have that opportunity to be out there again.
Yeah, that's actually really exciting. So Editions is both a journal that's in print and also like a publishing house for print. Is that right?
Shellia-Na-Gig Editions is just the publishing house.
Okay.
We don't publish a journal version of Shellia-Na-Gig. That's all online.
All right. So I'm going to go to our next panelist, Jess Weibel, who is a freelance writer and reporter. She's published in a bunch of places: the Du Bois Courier Express, the Jeffersonian Democrat, Punxsutawney Hometown, Explore Jefferson. She writes a column featuring writers of the Pennsylvania Wilds every month for the Brookville Mirror. She's also the founding editor of the Watershed Journal, an inclusive regional literary magazine for the Western Pennsylvania Wilds. Her poetry has been published in Empyrean Review and Tobacco Journal, and her fiction appears in the Bridge Literary Arts Journal. So say hi, Jess, and tell us a little bit more about the Watershed Journal and the efforts to encourage regional authorship in the Pennsylvania wilds.
Hi there, Jody. Thank you so much for having me today. This is great. So we started way back in 2017. I started a writers group called the Writers Block Party. And it was just an organic culmination of all the people that I was meeting through work with newspapers and other local publications. And it really grew and grew. And it grew to the point where we all decided that we wanted to have more outlets for our work. And obviously, that's a plight of many writers. And so, what we decided to do was to start our own literary magazine. And so, we started the Watershed Journal as a way to foster authorship in our communities, which we thought were underserved, way out in rural Pennsylvania here. So what we did was went with an inclusive model, meaning we really strive to find the importance and value and spotlight for all voices coming from our area, and to show the diversity that exists within our region. So we do poetry, prose, nonfiction, all types of things that we take for our magazine, and photography, original artwork, and kind of work it all together with a very local focus. We print quarterly magazines in print and have cooperating retail locations. We have over 700 followers on Facebook, and a really great website with a lot of content, with our blog, with a podcast that I do featuring local writers. And yeah, we've got, right now, we just are working on putting out our first book. So we've branched into cooperative publishing, and we just announced that yesterday. In fact, I had our first writer sign a contract for our very first book. So we're so excited to get to a new level. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. It's nice to see like so many small publishers sort of deciding to start just publishing, which actually brings me to Martha, who's up a little bit earlier than the rest of us because she's in Chicago. Martha Bain is with us today. She's a senior editor with Belt Publishing. It's an independent press founded in 2013 in Cleveland. Belt is a platform. I think it's a megaphone really for new and influential voices from the Rust Belt and Midwest and beyond. She is the editor of several Belt anthologies, most recently the Chicago Neighborhood Guidebook. She also doubles as Belt's marketing director. She's written for just too many places to even list, but including Eater, which I think is really important. And she also serves as the managing editor of the South Side Weekly, a newspaper providing in-depth coverage of politics, arts, and culture on Chicago's South Side. So Martha, if anybody's not familiar with Belt, I find it shocking that they're not, but if they're not, why don't you tell us a little bit about Belt Publishing and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm really happy to be here. Thank you all. It's not that early. It's only
a little bit.
It's 10. So yeah, Belt is, as you said, it's a small press founded in Cleveland in 2013. I've been with the press since about 2014. And we have really evolved and grown a lot over the last 2 years. In particular, our publishing platform has like doubled in the last 2 years. We went from publishing, like 5 books a year to 13, something ridiculous like that. So yeah, and we are kind of like a regional plus press at this point. Our initial focus was to publish books about the industrial and post-industrial Midwest: Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Youngstown, Flint, Detroit, places like that. And we started out publishing anthologies of writing of essays, personal essays, creative nonfiction, some poetry by writers in these communities that were not super well represented by in the publishing world. And since then, we have greatly expanded our scope to publish not just anthologies of writing about these kind of like core Rust Belt cities, but to other cities. Like we're coming out later this month. We have a Louisville anthology, for example. Not traditionally considered the Rust Belt, or even arguably the Midwest, because people argue about that all the time. And we have other books that are coming out that are not anthologies at all. We publish a lot of single issue titles by new and influential and kind of like often counterintuitive takes on regional history and culture, including most popularly What You're Getting Wrong About Appalachia, which some of you may be familiar with. There it is, Elizabeth Catt's book, which came out in 2018.
Yeah, she's great.
She's amazing. We have another book by Elizabeth coming out in February called Pure America, Eugenics and the Making of Modern Virginia. So we're kind of in the thick of getting that out the door now. We also published a lot of other miscellaneous books like this one, 55 Strong, which is an oral history of the 2018 West Virginia teacher strike, which I was also really proud of, and this was a really exciting title to work on. It came together super fast. And so one of the things that I really love about what we do is that because we're a small press, we're really just 5-6 people at this point. We all work part-time. Everybody else is in Cleveland except for me. I'm in Chicago. But we're able to be really flexible and do things like publish 55 books like 55 Strong in 3 months, which you can't do at a big 5 publishing company. So it allowed us we have the flexibility to take some risks and do some weird things. We primarily publish nonfiction, but that is not to say we would never publish fiction. We actually published our first book of poetry this year, which was called El Dorado Freddy's, and it's a book of poetry about fast food restaurants in Kansas and the rest of the Midwest. So we, our sort of editorial brief is all over the place right now and growing. And mostly we're just interested in publishing work that we find new and interesting.
Yeah, that's great. There's always what's the Rust Belt, what's the Midwest, what counts as Appalachia. Like, it's enough already. So, and I'm gonna leave my fellow Pittsburgher for last. This is Shelia Escalante. She is a poet and essayist here in Pittsburgh. She directs the MFA program in creative writing at Chatham. She's also the executive editor at The Fourth River, which is a journal of nature and place-based writing. From 2013 to 2020, she was editor-in-chief, and also instructed the MFA staff in the workings of the journal. She's overseen the production of 6 print issues and 8 online editions, I think. And also, you have a new book of poetry coming out. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and also about the Fourth River for anybody who doesn't know.
Thanks, Jody. Thanks for having me, everybody. Yes, I do have a book of poetry coming out. I'll plug it really fast. It is coming out, my gosh, like imminently next month with Brickhouse Books. It's called Mostly Human. It's a very quirky book about a girl called Round Baby who is mostly human most of the time. And it's set in the 70s and the 80s. And even though she's my age and she has had a lot of my experiences, we're not exactly the same person. So thanks for allowing me to plug that for a minute. But I'm here to talk about one of my other beloved projects, which is the Fourth River. I've been, as Jody mentioned, affiliated with the Fourth River since 2013, which is when I joined the faculty at Chatham University. And I stepped right into the role of editor-in-chief and professor of the practicum class, because the Fourth River is a journal that is a national journal. I think we have a national and maybe even like heading towards an international reputation, I hope, of writing about nature and place, but it is produced by the MFA students in the creative writing program at Chatham. So it's been a really interesting education for me as an editor, and I'm very, very proud of the work that we have done. I did just step back from the day-to-day mechanism of the journal to make space for a new editor-in-chief, and that person's name is Dr. Leah Panina Wilson. She is a brand new faculty member at Chatham as well. This is her second year with us. She's a Samoan American poet, and I believe, and she has experience in, she brings experience working with various literary journals, and I think that hers will be a fresh new perspective and new direction to take. So I'm really excited to see what she does, but I'm also really excited about the work that I did. And I can tell you a little bit about the journal. We began in print as a print journal in 2005, when the tag for the journal was it was a journal of nature and culture. So you can see that right from the beginning, there was this idea of intersection between humans and environment. And from there, the vision and the mission shifted a little bit, because I think when we're working with students and it's a practicum journal and we want them to take ownership, one of the wonderful things about it is that they get to bring their ideas to bear on the shape of the thing. So it has shifted over the years, but always remaining with that focus on that intersection of place, space, and identity. So we publish work, in that vein of nature writing that you might expect. We do get a lot of poems that are, could be pastorals that have relationship to the pastoral poem. But we have been working very hard, I think for the span of the journal, since way before I became part of it, to expand and question those definitions, right? What is nature? What is culture? Isn't it more than a poem about a pretty flower? Can it be a poem about, an urban space? My answer is yes. So we publish poetry, nonfiction, fiction. We publish visual art as well. We do a print issue usually in the spring, and we do at least one online issue in the fall, though that again has remained flexible. We have a rolling submissions period for a feature called Tributaries, which appears on our website and is a feature that puts one poem or one piece of short prose up on the front page of our website for about a week or two. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you about this? We've done some really interesting theme issues over the years. We don't always theme the journal, but sometimes when the students are interested and something is timely, we do. And for instance, really proud of an online issue we had a couple of years ago on queering nature, which was guest edited by Dakota Garilli and Michael Walsh. Really important work. You can find it on our website. We also did a special issue on climate change, which we get a lot of climate change work anyway, being a journal of nature and environment. But this was a sort of folio specifically focused on that very important issue. We had an issue on displacement that talked about climate refugees and people being moved by various forces in their natural and built environments. So I like to think that we're dynamic. We try to stay, kind of well connected to other nature and place journals who are publishing, like Orion and Ecotone, Terrain. We consider them sort of our cousin journals. We learn a lot from them. The students in the practicum read those journals with an eye towards admiration and also an eye towards like, what are they doing better than we are, and how can we bring that to the Fourth River? So a lot of what has happened to the journal in the last 7 or 8 years since I've been involved with it, again, has been directly related to students and their interests in the sort of keeping it current and important and relevant. So I could ramble on. I'll stop.
Yeah, that's okay. We have a question from one of our attendees for all of you, and she says that Karen says that it seems that all these publications have a balance between print and electronic publishing. And how do you find this balance? And is it different for anybody? I mean, Martha, you guys are publishing books. It's a little different, but is it different because we're in a pandemic and things are just things are different? We're doing this on Zoom because of that. So. How do you balance print and electronic publishing, and how do you use electronic media to reach your audience, you think? Anybody?
We had to grapple with this, and actually for our spring edition, we shifted and we offered the spring edition online for free on our website. And the idea there was, just access. Like we wanted to make sure that our readership had access to the work. And typically, an online edition, we sell like through Amazon. We've got online editions, but yeah, we felt like it was important for that spring. But what we found was that, by the time summer rolled around, people were really ready to support print editions. Yeah. They wanted the print editions back. And the way that we saw that was our pre-orders really skyrocketed. So I was at the post office for hours mailing out stacks upon stacks of print magazines to people who had pre-ordered, significant quantities of them to be able to pass around. And so there really is, as much as we are always thinking about traffic to our website and generating content and making sure that the print or the digital version is user friendly and looks really great. As much as we pay attention to that, we found that our readership, it's just really important to have print in hand experience.
Yeah, I always think that, I like having something. Martha knows this because I've covered some belt titles, and I really, I'll get a note from a publicist that will say, "Can I send you the PDF?" And I'm like, "No, send me the book. I want the book in hand," So, you guys are all, and, Martha, you're certainly in print, but Haley and Sheila, do you have print editions? And how have people responded to the electronic stuff? Do you find that they just
When I went online with Shellia-Na-Gig in 2016, I was just amazed at how quickly I received just really strong submissions from all over the nation. And a lot of people who knew Shellia-Na-Gig in the print edition in the 90s, somehow they found me out there, and some of the old people we had published originally, it just all fell into place. And I really didn't have any intention of getting into the book market at all when I started Shellia-Na-Gig online. But after doing it for a couple years, just reconnecting with the poetry community and just seeing the strength of the work, it just made me feel, I really want to be supporting book length works. And one thing I didn't mention at the beginning, I should have mentioned our Appalachian connection. I'm working now out of northeastern Kentucky, and I do teach in southeast Ohio at a branch campus of OU. So I have received lots of submissions from Ohio writers, and I belong to West Virginia Writers Inc. and go to that conference, and I've just met so many wonderful people. And one of our most recent collections is Carrie Gunter Seymour's Poet of the Year collection, and she's been named Ohio Poet Laureate, so that there's our Appalachian collection. And we've also published Barbara Sable's collection out of Akron. So I feel like even though we again started as this broader thing, that it's really becoming a nice niche for Appalachian writers as well, which is very exciting too. But just kind of fell into the book publishing, and it's growing, and I like the balance of both.
For us, it was sort of the opposite trajectory, because we started as a print journal, and I think there's been a shift to recognizing that we needed to have or grow a more robust online presence, which is one of the things that I tried to do when I joined the staff in 2013, was to redesign a website that was actually functional and user friendly and all this. And it's been through a couple of different iterations since then. We have ambitions. Let's do a chapbook series. Let's do a broadside series.
Right.
But because we're working within the constraints of a semester or a year, an academic kind of calendar and university budget, it's difficult, because we are trying to teach students core things about publishing. And the most important thing we're trying to teach them is what it means to be on this side of the editorial desk, and how to read submissions and how to choose really good work, and also how to connect that kind of reading experience back to the work that they're doing in their own writing and in their own classes as MFA students. So we kind of have to pick and choose. So we a couple of years ago, we instituted a prize for a folio length work that would sit inside of a print journal, as a little insert. And we played around with creating little chapbooks out of that, that the students learned how to hand stitch. And so we're kind of dabbling in that way. I can't see that we will give up our print issue of the Fourth River anytime soon. But I can see that we are moving much more into interesting digital realms.
Yeah, Martha, I have on my stack of books to cover, Black in the Middle from just I think I don't think it's officially released. I think it officially drops next week.
It is. It came out.
Okay,
It came out
so
September 1st.
It's official, and everybody
Yeah.
should order it directly from Belt or from an independent bookstore. Don't order it from Amazon. So, but you guys have put together a lot of anthologies and other writing too. But the anthologies are interesting because we've talked already so much about place and those anthologies because they're very specific to the place, and they're all writers either from or living in those places, capture places in ways that are not stereotypical, that are not easy to reach for tropes. So can you just talk about those and how do those happen? Are you pitched that by somebody outside of the house, or does that sort of generate you and Anne and everybody else on staff says we should do one in Akron, and then you sort of look around? Which way does it happen?
Hi, Amanda. Usually we usually they're pitched to us by editors in the city. Like each anthology has a local editor. Erin Keene, for example, edited the Louisville anthology. And so Erin, she wanted to do a Louisville book. She worked her network, and she did all the outreach in Louisville to pull together submissions for the book. And then so it's really on them. Well, I don't think we've ever said like, oh, we need to do a Kansas City anthology. It's always somebody locally coming to us. But yeah, I'm gonna take that back because I brought all my props. Doing a anthology about Gary, Indiana, has been a pet desire of mine for several years. And so I kind of actually put it out there on Twitter. I was like, who wants to do a Gary book? And then someone got in touch with me that way. This one was kind of my idea. This is also just coming out just now. But what's great about them is that, yeah, they are super local, and they are not, often not everybody who contributes to them is somebody who like identifies necessarily primarily as a writer. Sometimes, we have pieces in these books by people who are, public figures in different ways. In our Dayton, and we have a Dayton book coming out in December, and the mayor of Dayton contributed to it.
Nice.
So there are people who are business owners, cultural leaders, things like that, who, maybe their prose is not the most perfectly beautiful creative nonfiction prose you've ever read in your life. But they are speaking about an aspect of the city that, from their own perspective, that you wouldn't necessarily get from a traditional kind of like journalistic treatment, or so that, but the books really reflect the sensibility of the person who puts them together. Some of them are more literary. We did the Detroit anthology, came out, was like the third city anthology we ever did, and it's just this beautiful collection of poetry and photography and essays. And it's the way Anna Clark, who was the editor, the way she kind of structured it and put it all together, it really just flows in this, to me, very seamless fashion. And it is a literary work. It is a piece of art in itself. And some of them are much more down and dirty, and like there'll be interviews in them. There'll be more journalistic pieces, just first person stories. The Gary book and the Louisville book, the Dayton book, both have pieces in them that are sort of like as told tos, in which the editor, Sam and Shannon, respectively, they found somebody whose perspective they really wanted to include in the book, and they just went out and interviewed them and then transcribed it kind of like Studs Terkel style.
Yeah.
So they really run the gamut, and we've never gotten a submission from like they'll just turn the whole manuscript to us. We've never gotten it and said like, oh no, you have to cut that piece, or no, you have to, like we don't do that. Okay. So they're really driven by the editors.
Yeah, I was going to ask you guys, like all of you, what kind of editing happens in-house? Do you edit much at all? Do you work closely with the writers? Do you just copy edit for proofreading purposes? Like what, if somebody submits and you say yes, then what happens to their work?
I can start, if that's okay. We do very little, I guess, maybe you would call it developmental
Mhm.
editing. Again, mostly because of the time constraint of a semester. But we do, sometimes our fiction editor he's pretty old school, and he really likes to build a relationship with a writer. And so he, among all of the genre editors, and the genre editors are the faculty of the MFA program, he will be the one to really work like closely one-on-one to develop a piece of writing with somebody who he thinks has potential. The rest of us can do very little of that just because of time. The students in the practicum are definitely taught how to copy edit. That's one of the things that they learn how to do. So it's not like you send your work in and then nobody looks at it again and it ends up on, you know, in a print issue and it's filled with errors. We would never let that pass, you know.
Right. Jess, Haley, do you have anything to add?
We do quarterly workshops.
Mhm.
And this is part of, so what we established a little way down the road was 501c3 nonprofit. So after we kind of culminated into that, a big part of our mission is, you know, empowering and elevating the writing of our region. And so we hold now, with the pandemic, it's looked a little different lately, these workshops, but essentially it's really been one of my favorite things about what I do with the journal. So the idea and the way that we build it into our quarterly cycle is that people who are writers who are considering submitting, or just to anyone, it's open to the general public, they can come in and we do concurrent sessions, so they can choose like punctuation in poetry, or, you know, self-publishing, or whatever it is, sensory language, whatever the content is. Then we do a writer's rumble, which is kind of like a gloves off, I'm here for critical feedback and I'm here to make my piece better. And then we have a peer review, which is more supportive feedback. Here's what you're doing well. Here's how to continue doing that. Here's the things I appreciate about your voice. And so we offer that as a way to kind of, you know, try to mitigate any errors before they make their way to the submissions arena. But then I do editing as well. Again, like Sheila said, I try to stay away from real developmental editing. That happens more organically, people reaching out within our community that we've built, that we have groups that have kind of peer review groups that have taken on, you know, people looking for beta readers and things like that. So the community sense really fosters a lot of that, or like I said, people coming to me ahead of time. But then I'm just looking for how to, and the layout. I have to mention our managing editor, Sarah Rossi. She does a great job of this with our layout. What we try to bring to the table is, how do we take what's here and enhance what is already there, with whether it's punctuation, you know, technical editing, or layout. And so, you know, I love the way that she will take a piece. Here's a copy of the journal. So she'll take a piece and she'll pair it with, you know, the artwork or the photography in ways that are unexpected, ways that are interesting, but ways that really bring out like what is already there. And so yeah, our approach to editing is really trying to stay true to the author's voice.
Haley, anything to add?
We don't work too closely with the authors for the online work. We generally won't accept something unless we feel it's, you know, quite done and polished. For the books that we're doing, I do try to create a very one-on-one relationship with our authors and do work more closely with them in terms of maybe arranging poems or, you know, proofreading, that kind of thing. I do only work on one book at a time, so that helps me get that personal relationship going and really make it a partnership with the, you know, choosing the cover and, you know, how the book looks on the inside, and really letting the authors have a pretty big say in the process of how it works.
Yeah, Elizabeth pointed out that Writer's Rumble is great, and I love that. I love that phrase. I'm going to borrow it, but I'll try to footnote you when I do. But on your teams, like in-house, you know, how do you guys work through what gets published? I mean, Martha, you get a note from somebody like me that says, I want to publish this anthology. You know, how do you guys sort of talk that through? And that's true for everybody. You get a poem or you're an essay, and what's that process look like behind the curtains?
Ours is still pretty informal. We don't have like, editorial sit downs where we go through all the stacks of submissions or anything. We usually will get a proposal from someone, and Anne Trubeck, who's the publisher and founder of Belt, will, pass forward it to me, and Dan Chrisman is the other editor. So that's it. That's our editorial staff right there. And she'll pass on to us and say, like, what do you think? And we talk about it both in terms of, we do look at it both on the merits of the project itself and in terms of how it fits into the other books that we're publishing. Kind of like how it fits into what we have planned for that whole season or that whole year. We don't want to publish, 5 books about Pittsburgh. Sorry.
Why not?
I know.
Great place.
All in one year. We have 2 Pittsburgh books coming out next year. So
yeah.
So yeah, that's basically it. But it's pretty casual back and forth. Ultimately, it's generally up to Anne. She's the yay or nayer. But that's it. I want to have a more precise process.
Yeah. Sheila, what happens at Fourth River? How do you guys make those decisions?
Yeah, so we're lucky to have a student who holds a fellowship, which means that she is the managing editor for 2 years. So it's her responsibility to go through our submissions. We use Submittable, and so at the beginning of a semester, she'll go through all of our submissions that we need to go through for the term, and she will create a reading schedule rather, for the students. And we usually break the students out into, depending on how many we have in the class, either they're going to be working in genres, so we have poetry, fiction, nonfiction, or oftentimes they're just working in all genres. But they have a weekly reading schedule where they're required to very closely read the work and prepare written annotations, written comments for their discussions in class. So they'll read outside of class, they'll make their annotations and post them to Submittable for the others to see, and they'll use that as a jumping off point for the conversation that will happen. And we require them to have those conversations and come to consensus about whether a piece will be thumbs up to the genre editors, or thumbs down, which will mean it won't pass that level. Anything that gets sent up to the genre editors will be then reassigned. And this, as I said before, the genre editors are the MFA faculty members. And then that person will make the final call about whether the piece is accepted for the journal or not.
Jess and Haley, you got anything to add to that? No.
Very, very similar process. We're pretty small here at Shellia-Na-Gig. I've only just brought on a second reader with Barbara Stabrol, and so I have 2 readers now, just helping me, read through the submissions. But I do make the final call on everything, and I read all the contest work. So we're still pretty tiny.
Yeah.
I guess I could add that our mission and the way that we've set up is an inclusive model, and so it really kind of sets us apart from what is traditionally done, with literary magazines and publishers. So we strive to publish everyone who submits, and the way that we do that is, we're not casting a wide net. We're keeping it local. We've got 11 counties in northwestern Pennsylvania wilds that we serve with what we do, and are trying to, pinpoint our focus and our efforts. And so we started, when we first started, it was really important that we weren't trying to, define ourselves based on exclusivity. We wanted to define ourselves based on who we include and who we listen to and who we, represent on our platform. And as a result, we've had a very enthusiastic following of people who, and no offense at all, because I love everything that you guys are doing, but are non-academics, people who typically would look at very academic journals and think, oh, I can't do that. Like Martha, what you were saying about people who don't necessarily identify as writers contributing to these local anthologies. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with people who will say, well, I'm no writer, but, and those are the conversations I love to have. And those are the explorations that I'm really very interested in. And what we found is that when we open the door and, treat people with, immediate interest and attention and respect in terms of their stories and who they are, because everybody can tell a story, then what we've seen is that platform then launches people into writing their own books and, developing manuscripts that are then accepted at other publishing companies and, doing work that's really interesting and fresh and unexpected, which is very exciting to see.
Yeah, I think Martha used the word counterintuitive about some of the publishing that happens, and I love that as a phrase, because I find that the region often is very, sort of pigeonholed as one thing. The Rust Belt means this, Appalachia means that, and I, as a person who lives in a city which is at the intersection of both Appalachia and the Rust Belt, I find that's not the case. What outside notions of the place are really don't reflect it. So doing this really hard work of regional publishing, I think is it's great, and including voices that are not people who aren't writers, but they have stories to tell. So it's really wonderful.
Can I just add one thing to that?
Yeah.
One of the things that we always say about our city anthology series, which again they're really our bread and butter, and that was the very first book we published was an anthology writing about Cleveland, is that they're anthologies written by people in the community for people in the community. Like, we're not trying to explain Louisville or Columbus or Dayton to outsiders. Like, we're not writing for a coastal media audience. So it is about like respecting the value of that story. We're not trying to prove to anybody why it's worth writing about Gary, Indiana. We take it for granted that it is a worthwhile project and that everybody in that anthology has a worthwhile story to tell. And I think that framing is something that we feel really strongly about. And I think it's what makes the books resonate with people so much. So, yeah.
Yeah. I really want to read the Gary anthology, even though
it's so good. I'm so excited for the anthology.
I'm so glad for you. I'm really, so, you just mentioned, your audience. Martha just mentioned that. So for all of you, who is your audience? Who are your readers? If somebody submits their work and they're lucky enough to get it published, who's going to be on the other end reading their stuff going, wow, this is great.
Well, I guess I should say that our regional approach definitely fosters a very regional audience and following, which is very much what we're interested in doing. We have found that we have a readership beyond that with people who we have like memberships, people who are become members and sponsors of what we're doing, and we're reaching people far beyond our region in that way, who, just kind of appreciate and are interested in the area, because where we live in the Pennsylvania wilds, and I've got this beautiful backdrop to me right now. It's just such a wonderful place to visit. There's so many outdoor recreation opportunities and just beautiful natural landscapes. And so that immediately draws people in who, have come here to visit, or they spend their summers here, or whatever it is, who are just coming in for that. So it's a way to really get to know the region very intimately through the work and the voices that are, living here. And whether it's people who, can trace their lineage back generations and generations here, or people who are transplants from other areas like me. And, it's really, we don't necessarily think about creating an insular community that in terms of our readership, but we have found that our most robust following is definitely local.
Yeah. So a question from somebody about, so what tips would you give writers who are just sort of wading into these waters of submitting their work and trying to get published?
I can throw
Yeah.
a few
Yeah, please.
chestnuts
Yeah.
out. Read as much as you can.
Sure.
Read the journals that seem to this is the mission for the missions speak to you in some way. Read the mission statements of the journals, but read the work and see, if you're interested in the writers and the voices there, and if your work could contribute to that conversation. Really take a very strategic approach to how you submit, because submitting can be expensive, and I know, and we know that as editors, and it's $3 a pop here, $2 a pop there, and you don't want to just do a scatter shot and empty your budget for the month or whatever it is. You want to be intentional and thoughtful about where you're sending your work. And then always make sure that you're sending work out that has had time to marinate and sit, and you're sure it's your best work, and you've certainly proofread it, and you're sending it off with a letter or a little text box on Submittable that is going to the right journal and the right editor and all that kind of stuff. I'm a little bit old school about that. I guess.
No, I am too. I am too. Anybody else?
I will say that so obviously we don't use Submittable because we're a book publisher. But for us, what Sheila said about reading is really important. Like if you're writing a book, make sure you've read all the other books that are relevant to your book or that are competitive with your book. And just you can't. I feel like unfortunately you can never read enough, which is it's an endless project, right? But if I can just be self-serving for a second, I want another prop, which is that we also did just publish this book, which is called "So You Want to Publish a Book" by Ann Trebeck, our founder and publisher. And it's a book both for writers and for people who are interested in learning about the publishing industry. So a lot of good, and read is one of the chapters in this book. But for us, like for a book for us, she talks in So You Want to Publish a Book, she talks about how we don't actually need people to write us like a full proposal with sample chapters and everything else, like right out of the gate. Like what we're looking for in terms of a book pitch is just a really well-written email, like an email that explains who you are and what your book is and why you're the person to write this book, and that you understand where it stands it might sit in the marketplace. And that's all we want. We're not fussy about like, no, you have to send us your first 30 pages or anything like that.
Yeah.
So again, we like to be flexible in that sense. I would also add, I realized I can't respond in the comments because I didn't log in, but there was a couple of comments in there that I wanted to note. Now, of course, they're gone. But we also do actually have an online magazine that is separate from Belt Publishing called Belt Magazine, that is edited by a really great guy named Ryan Schnur. And it publishes journalism and literary nonfiction. And poetry. Ryan is actually a poet. What? Yeah.
And photo essays, I think, as well.
And photo essays. Yeah. And it pays. And Ryan does not use Submittable either, as far as I know. And I was going to put his address in the chat, but I don't know how to do that. But it's based, I think it's just ryan@beltmag.com. So, and you can, and the URL is beltmag.com. So if you're looking for a more short form, you don't have a book in you. I know not everybody's trying to write a book, but you could take a look at Belt Magazine and see what sort of things that Ryan is publishing. And there, thank you, Christina. And see if that's something that might be a good outlet for your work, for sure.
Yeah. So we are right up against our time to wrap up so that everybody can enjoy the music at our lunchtime, or as I like to think of it, halftime of our festivities here. So it's been really great. Everybody who's out there listening should read all of these journals and pick up these titles from Belt, and these new titles. I actually have Carrie Gunther Seymour's collection in my stack of things to read. Since I cover books, I have a large, there it is. I have a large stack of things next to me all the time, although Black in the Middle is at the top of my stack right now. So, but you guys have all been really, really wonderful. And thank you so much for coming in and spending some time this morning with us and with the attendees of the conference. I appreciate it a lot.
Thank
Sure.
you, Jody.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was great.
Thank
Thank you
everybody.
for having me.
Yeah, it's been wonderful.
Yeah. Thanks.
Enjoy the rest of the conference, guys.
Joy.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.